Marcus had $487 in his checking account on Tuesday morning. By Friday, he'd have $4,950. And the weird part? Nothing about his life looked different from the outside. Same apartment. Same car that made that noise when he turned left. Same job. But something invisible had shifted, and Marcus could feel it in a way that's hard to explain to someone who's never been there. Here's the part that should bother you more than it does. According to a Federal Reserve study, nearly 40% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money or selling something. But Marcus wasn't in that 40% anymore. And the distance between $487 and $5,000? That's not just numbers on a screen. That's the difference between two completely different operating systems for your life. My name is Money Sketcher, and I spend way too much time thinking about the exact moment money stops controlling you and starts working for you. And if you've ever felt like you're one unexpected bill away from everything falling apart, stick around and hit subscribe, because today we're talking about the invisible threshold that changes everything. And here's the thing nobody tells you about hitting $5,000 for the first time: the money itself is the least important part of what just happened. Hold on to that. I'll come back to it. Before we go further, let me be straight with you about something, because it's the whole idea this video is built on. I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice. This is just what I've watched happen over and over to people who hit this number and to people who don't. And the single biggest thing that separates those two groups comes down to one weird truth: $5,000 isn't a destination. It's a threshold. And most people never cross it because they're optimizing for the wrong game entirely. Let me show you what I mean. Think about what your brain is doing right now if you don't have $5,000 saved. Every unexpected sound your car makes is a potential catastrophe. Every dentist appointment comes with this low-grade dread. You're not just living your life, you're mentally calculating the financial blast radius of everything that could go wrong. Psychologists have a term for this: scarcity mindset. And a Princeton study found that financial stress reduces cognitive capacity by the equivalent of 13 IQ points. 13 points. You're not bad with money. You're literally running your decision-making on a handicapped processor because part of your brain is always doing emergency math in the background. Here's what changes after you hit $5,000. The water heater dies. And instead of that sick dropping feeling in your stomach, instead of the 2 a.m. spiral about which bill you're going to pay late, you just call the plumber. It's annoying. It costs money. But it's not a crisis. That shift, that one shift, is worth more than the $5,000 itself. Because the mental bandwidth you get back when you stop playing financial defense every single day? That's the resource that lets you start playing offense. The anxiety tax is real. It's expensive. And the first $5,000 is what pays it off. Let's talk about something that should make you furious: being broke is more expensive than being comfortable. There's an old idea called the boots theory. A poor man buys $30 boots that fall apart in a year, so over 10 years he spends $300 and always has wet feet. A man who can afford $150 boots buys them once and stays dry for a decade. That's not a metaphor. That's your actual life. Without $5,000, you're paying the poverty premium on everything. You can't afford to buy in bulk, so you pay more per unit at the grocery store. You can't catch a good deal because you don't have cash ready when it shows up. You overdraft your account once and pay $35 for the privilege of spending your own money. You can't afford preventive maintenance, so you wait until things break and pay 3 times as much for emergency repairs. A report from the Brookings Institution found that low-income households pay effectively higher prices for the same goods and services, sometimes 10% to 20% more, just because they can't afford to optimize. Think about what that actually means. The same exact life costs you more money just because you don't have enough money. That's not a bug in the system. That's the design. But here's what $5,000 does: it breaks the cycle. You see a deal on the thing you were going to buy anyway? You can grab it. Your insurance offers a discount if you pay 6 months upfront instead of monthly. You can take it. You can buy the $50 work boots instead of replacing the $20 ones 3 times. $5,000 doesn't just sit there. It actively makes everything else in your life cheaper. That's the second shift, and most people never get to feel it. This one's going to sound backwards at first, but stay with me. The best opportunities to make money show up when you don't desperately need money. Marcus got offered a freelance project that paid $800, but it required 2 weeks of work before he'd see a dime. A year ago, Marcus would have had to say no because he literally couldn't afford to wait 2 weeks for grocery money. But with $5,000 in the bank, he could say yes. Think about how many opportunities you've had to turn down just because the cash flow didn't line up with your rent being due. The side gig that pays well but pays slow. The career move that requires a certification you'd have to pay for upfront. The chance to buy inventory for a small business, or invest in a skill, or take the slightly lower paying job that actually has a future. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can only say yes to the options that pay immediately. And those are almost never the best options. Economists call this liquidity constraint, and it's one of the main reasons why people stay stuck at the same income level year after year. Not because they're not talented. Not because they're lazy. But because they literally cannot afford to access the opportunities that would pay off long term. $5,000 is the key that unlocks those opportunities. And here's the thing that makes this asymmetry even more brutal: the people who don't need the money are the ones who get the best deals on making more of it. That's not fair. But it is true. Let's talk about power for a second. When you've got nothing in the bank, you negotiate from a position of desperation. Your boss knows it. Your landlord knows it. The used car salesman definitely knows it. You need this job, so you take the lowball offer. You need this apartment, so you don't push back on the rent increase. You need a car today, so you sign the loan with the terrible interest rate. A study from the University of California found that employees with less than $500 in emergency savings were significantly less likely to negotiate their salary or ask for raises. Not because they didn't deserve it, but because they couldn't afford the risk of losing the offer. Think about what you're actually trading when you negotiate from empty. You're trading future earnings for immediate security. And that trade happens invisibly, over and over, compounding in the wrong direction for years. But here's what $5,000 does to your negotiation position: it buys you the ability to walk away. You can say, "I appreciate the offer, but I need $X to make this work," and actually mean it. You can look at an apartment and say no if the terms are bad. You can take 2 extra days to shop for car insurance instead of grabbing the first quote because your current policy expires tomorrow. The power to say no is the same thing as the power to say yes to something better. And most people never get to feel what that's like because they're always negotiating with a gun to their head. Here's where it gets really interesting, and it's the reason the first $5,000 is harder than the next $50,000. Once you have $5,000, you stop bleeding money on emergencies and poverty premiums. Which means the next dollar you earn actually gets to stay. Let me show you what that looks like in practice. Without the buffer, an unexpected $400 car repair goes on the credit card at 24% interest. You're not just out $400. You're out $400 plus interest, plus the monthly payment that eats into next month's budget, which makes the next emergency more likely to land on the credit card too. It's a debt spiral disguised as bad luck. But with $5,000, the $400 repair comes out of savings. You pay cash. No interest. And yeah, now you've got $4,600. But here's the thing, you're not bleeding anymore. Next month, you put $200 back. Month after that, another $200. And within 60 days, you're back to $5,000 and the cycle didn't collapse. That's the compounding window opening up. You go from running in place to actually moving forward. And the momentum feeds itself. The National Bureau of Economic Research found that households with at least $3,000 in liquid savings were 70% less likely to experience material hardship over the next year. Not because they made more money, but because they stopped losing money to emergency financing. Remember what I said at the start? The money itself is the least important part of what just happened. Here's what I actually mean. $5,000 doesn't change your life because of what you can buy with it. You're not supposed to spend it. It changes your life because of what you stop losing. You stop losing sleep. You stop losing cognitive bandwidth to financial stress. You stop losing money to the poverty premium. You stop losing opportunities because you can't afford the cash flow gap. And you stop losing negotiation leverage because you're desperate. The $5,000 doesn't sit there looking impressive. It sits there working invisibly in the background, the same way a good foundation works for a house. Nobody walks into your living room and compliments your foundation. But without it, everything else you build will crack. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That's great for Marcus, but I can't save $5,000. I'm barely making it as is. And I hear that. I really do. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud: most people can't get to $5,000 not because they don't make enough, but because they're spending on the wrong things first. I'm not talking about cutting lattes or skipping avocado toast. That's not real money. I'm talking about the car payment on the vehicle you bought to impress people who don't care. The subscription services you forgot you had. The rent on the apartment that's $200 more than you need it to be because the kitchen looked good on Instagram. The median American household makes over $70,000 a year. And 60% of them are living paycheck to paycheck. That's not an income problem. That's a priority problem. And the game is rigged to keep you stuck there. Every ad you see, every influencer you follow, every "you deserve this" message is designed to make you upgrade the visible stuff while your foundation stays cracked. You're allowed to opt out of that game entirely. And listen, everything we've talked about so far is about protecting what you have and stopping the leaks. That's the foundation. But there's a level above this, and it's about widening the gap between what you earn and what you spend from the income side. That's where the real compounding starts. I've built a breakdown over on my channel about how I personally went from stuck to building systems that actually generate income in the background, step by step, no fluff. If that's the kind of shift you're after, check the description. It's there if you want it. No pressure. Alright, let's keep going. So if you're not there yet, let's talk about the actual path, because it's simpler than you think and harder than it should be. Step 1, automate before you see it. If you're relying on willpower to save what's left at the end of the month, you'll never get there. Because there's never anything left. Set up an automatic transfer on payday. $50, $100, $200, whatever you can actually sustain. The number matters less than the system. The money moves before your brain has a chance to negotiate with itself. Step 2, put it somewhere annoying to access. Not impossible. Just annoying. A separate savings account at a different bank works. The goal is to add just enough friction that you won't drain it for something dumb, but you can still get to it in an actual emergency. Step 3, define what an emergency actually is. A true emergency is: I lose my income, my car is undrivable, my health is at risk, or my housing is in jeopardy. An emergency is not: there's a sale, I'm bored, my friends are going out, or I want it. Write that down. Stick it to your mirror. Because the definition is what protects the $5,000 from becoming $0 again. Step 4, when you use it, rebuild it immediately. If the AC dies and you pull $800 out, that's what it's for. You did it right. But the next dollar you free up goes right back into rebuilding that buffer before anything else. The $5,000 isn't a finish line. It's a threshold you maintain. Here's what nobody tells you about money, and it's the thing that changes everything once you see it. The real game isn't about getting rich. It's about getting to the point where money stops being the thing that makes every other decision for you. $5,000 is the number where that shift happens for most people. It's not enough to retire on. It's not going to buy you a house. But it is enough to stop living in survival mode. And survival mode is expensive. Not just financially. It costs you in stress, in health, in opportunities you can't take, in relationships that strain under financial pressure, and in the quiet, constant hum of anxiety that follows you everywhere. Most people never get out of survival mode. Not because they're not smart or hardworking. Not because they're not talented or capable. But because the system is designed to keep them there, spending on the next shiny thing instead of building the invisible foundation that actually changes the game. You don't have to play that way. Let's go back to Marcus for a second. He hit $5,000 on a Friday. And the weekend after, nothing looked different. Same apartment. Same car. Same friends who had no idea anything had changed. But Marcus knew. He slept better that weekend than he had in 2 years. Not because the mattress was different. But because the weight was gone. Monday morning, his check engine light came on. And for the first time in his adult life, his first thought wasn't, how am I going to pay for this? It was, annoying, but I'll handle it. That's the shift. That's the whole thing. Real wealth was never the stuff you can point to. It's the 2 a.m. you sleep through. The emergency that doesn't scare you. The decision you get to make instead of the decision that gets made for you. $5,000 won't make you rich. But it will make you free enough to start building toward rich. And most people never give themselves permission to get there. So here's what I want you to do: pick one expense this week that you can cut, redirect, or delay. Just one. Automate that amount into a separate account. And start the climb. 10 years from now, you'll either thank yourself or wish you had. This is Money Sketcher. I'll see you in the next one. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor and this video is for educational purposes only. Any financial results depend entirely on your own decisions and circumstances.